where are you watching this story from? If you believe that one moment can change someone's life, then stay and listen. Like, share and subscribe to the channel. Pour yourself a drink and join me as I tell the story. The sun was slowly setting behind the mountains, painting the sky orange and violet. In the midst of this vastness was Isabella's ranch. She was a beautiful and strong woman who had learned to fend for herself after being left alone. She spent her days caring for animals and cultivating the land in silence. A silence that had become her only faithful companion. Loneliness did not weigh her down. Quite the contrary, it had made her resilient and proud. Every nail in the wood of her house and every furrow she had ploughed bore the imprint of her hands. Many men had tried to approach her, some out of genuine interest, and others simply out of curiosity. But she had rejected them all. She didn't need anyone, or at least that's what she told herself every morning. One afternoon, while gathering firewood near the barn, she heard firm footsteps that weren't her own. A horse stopped in front of the ranch entrance, ridden by a tall man with a penetrating gaze and a dusty hat, who was unknown to her. The silence of the countryside seemed broken by his mere presence. Isabella looked at him cautiously, as if she knew how to defend her territory. "Is he looking for water for his horse?" she asked bluntly. The stranger dismounted calmly, as if the journey had not tired him at all. He took off his hat and looked her straight in the eye. "I didn't come for water, ma'am," he replied in a deep voice. "I came because I want to live here with you." Isabella stood motionless, as if struck by lightning in the middle of her ranch. She had heard many things in her life, but never such a direct and daring statement. "Live here," she repeated incredulously, clutching the firewood tightly in her arms. "Yes," said the man serenely, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "I'm not looking for a night's shelter or a plate of food. I want to share your life, your ranch, and your sunrises." The woman let out a short, almost nervous laugh. "You must be crazy. I don't even know your name." "My name is Gabriel," he replied, not taking his eyes off her. "And I know more about you than you realize." That sentence set off warning bells for Isabella. No one should know about her lonely life, least of all a stranger who had suddenly appeared and said that he wanted to live with her. However, there was something in his eyes, a sincere, steady gleam that puzzled her. He didn't look like a freeloader or a charlatan. He looked like someone who spoke the truth. The air became thick with questions that Isabella didn't dare ask. Who was this man, really? Why had he come to her remote mountain ranch? Above all, what secrets did he carry with him that gave him such confidence? She didn't invite him in, but she didn't turn him away either. Perhaps for the first time in a long while, the silence of her ranch had been broken in a way she couldn't ignore. That night, under a starry sky, Isabella realized that Gabriel's arrival was no mere chance encounter. Fate had tested her solitude, and something inside her trembled like never before. Night fell heavily over the ranch, accompanied by the chirping of crickets and the gentle tapping of the wind on the windows. Isabella closed the door more forcefully than usual, trying to convince herself that everything that had happened with the stranger was just a passing delusion. However, when she went to put the firewood by the fireplace, she noticed through the crack in the window that Gabriel was still standing there next to his horse, as if waiting for her to change her mind. Isabella sighed, feeling both annoyed and confused. No one had ever dared to challenge her in this way before. She had always managed to keep men at a distance. Yet this stranger hadn't taken a single step forward. She decided to go out with an oil lamp. The light illuminated his haughty silhouette as she opened the door. "I already told you there's no place for you here," she declared, using the same firmness she had used to scare away coyotes. Gabriel calmly looked up at her. "I don't need a room or your hospitality. I just need to be close. I can sleep outside by the barn. Don't you understand?" she replied harshly. "I don't know who you are or what your intentions are. I'm not going to let just any man stay here as if nothing had happened." He wasn't offended. In fact, a slight smile appeared on his face. It was the kind of smile that revealed confidence without being arrogant. "I'm not just any man, Isabella." Mentioning her name threw her off balance. She took a step back, frowning. "How do you know my name?" she asked, her voice thick with suspicion. Gabriel didn't answer right away. He looked down for a moment, as if deciding how much to reveal. "I heard it in town. They talk about the woman who runs a ranch alone, who doesn't need anyone and who lives in isolation, as if loneliness were a wall." Isabella pressed her lips together. She hated that the townspeople were talking about her as if she was some kind of oddity. That isolation was her shield, not a spectacle. "And even knowing that, why did you come?" she insisted, her tone lower and almost defiant. Gabriel took a step closer, close enough for the light from the lamp to reveal his intense, dark eyes. "Because I believe that behind that wall, there is a woman who still knows what it means to love." The sentence struck like a thunderbolt. Isabella's heart leapt and she tried to control it. She hardened her face, feigning indifference. "You don't know me. Don't talk about what you don't know." "Maybe," he replied, "but I'll find out, even if it takes me as long as it takes." Silence enveloped them again, thick with tension. Finally, Isabella turned on her heel. "Do whatever you want," she said, before going inside and slamming the door shut. But that night, when she went to bed, she couldn't sleep. Her mind was filled with the image of that strange man, his firm voice and his gaze that seemed to pierce through her. What was Gabriel really looking for? Why had his arrival shaken her so deeply that she couldn't even explain it herself? As the wind rustled the trees, Isabella realized that the armor of loneliness she had built up over the years was beginning to crack. The next morning the sun emerged shyly, bathing the meadows surrounding the ranch in golden light. Isabella got up early as usual, put on her hat and grabbed her lasso before heading to the corral to check on the cattle. Everything seemed normal until she heard noises in the barn. She approached cautiously, her hand on the handle of her work knife. When she opened the door, she found Gabriel feeding her horses as if he owned the place. "What are you doing here?" she asked dryly. Gabriel looked up calmly, as if he had expected her reaction. "Your horses were without water. I couldn't just stand by and do nothing." Isabella crossed her arms, holding back her annoyance. "I don't need your help. I've been running this ranch alone for years." He smiled slightly. "I know, but even the strongest woman needs a break sometimes." The phrase struck her deep inside. She had always taken pride in her independence, but being told this so casually by a stranger disarmed her. "I'll say it again, stranger. I don't want company, much less favors," she insisted, although deep down she knew her words were growing weaker. Gabriel set the bucket of water on the ground and took a step towards her. "I'm not trying to invade your life, Isabella. I just want to show you that not all men come to take from you. Some also come to give." The silence became heavy. Isabella could feel the tension mounting between them. Not knowing how to respond, she turned abruptly and left the barn. However, Gabriel's figure kept popping into her mind for the rest of the morning as she worked in the garden and checked the mill. At noon, the sky began to darken. Heavy clouds rolled in from the horizon, foreshadowing a storm. Isabella hurried the animals to shelter, but suddenly a strong gust of wind knocked down part of the fence. She ran to stop the cattle, but the bull's force almost dragged her away. At that moment, Gabriel appeared out of nowhere, holding the rope firmly beside her. He shouted as he held the reins firmly. Together, they managed to restrain the animal until the danger had passed. Isabella was left panting and her heart was racing. When she turned around, she found that Gabriel was standing so close to her that she could feel the warmth of his breath. "You could have been hurt," he said in a deep voice. "I didn't need you to save me," she replied, although her voice was trembling. He smiled softly. "I didn't come to save you. I came to be by your side." Those words made her shudder. It was a reaction she couldn't hide. For an eternal moment, they stood looking at each other as if the rest of the world had disappeared. The wind blew strongly and the storm roared, but the real battle was in their hearts. Isabella looked away abruptly and took a step back. "Don't think this changes anything. You're still a stranger." Gabriel didn't move, but his eyes shone with determination. "Then give me time to stop being one." Isabella didn't answer. She turned and ran towards the house, trying to drown out the turmoil in her chest. However, while the storm raged outside, something had begun to change inside her, and she didn't know how to stop it. The storm hit with full force. Thunder rumbled over the ranch, and raindrops beat against the house's windows like whips. Isabella closed the shutters tightly, despite the wind whipping at them as if trying to tear them off. Gabriel came in soaked, his hat in his hand and his shirt clinging to his body. Water dripped from his hair, leaving a trail on the wooden floor. "I'm not staying outside in this downpour," he said calmly, almost defiantly. Isabella looked at him hard, but had no argument. The storm was too violent to send him away. With a resigned sigh, she pointed to the fireplace and said, "If you're going to stay, at least light the fire." Gabriel obeyed without protest, knelt down and skillfully lit the wood. Soon the flames lit up the room. The warmth spread, though an air of tension still hung between them. Isabella settled into a rocking chair, arms crossed, while Gabriel took off his wet boots and placed them near the fire. He glanced at her with a calm smile. "I must admit, you have an indomitable spirit," he commented. "Not everyone can run a ranch alone." She lifted her chin proudly. "I don't need anyone to remind me of that. This ranch is my life, and I don't intend to share it with a stranger." Gabriel leaned towards her, but didn't lose his composure. "And what if that stranger doesn't want to take anything from you, but rather offer you everything." Isabella's heart skipped a beat, but she didn't let it show on her face. "Words are easy, stranger. I've learned not to trust promises." Thunder shook the house, and the silence that followed became unbearable for a moment. Gabriel moved closer until he was standing in front of her. His dark eyes reflected the light from the fire. "I'm not a man of many promises, Isabella. I prefer to prove things with actions." She held his gaze, trying to appear firm, although inside she was trembling. Loneliness had been her shield for years, and now this man, with his warm and persistent presence, was breaking down those walls. Suddenly, the wind blew so hard that one of the windows flew open. Rain poured in, soaking the floor. Gabriel ran to close it, fighting against the current, and managed to lock it again. When he returned, he was breathing heavily. "Look, Isabella, if life insists on putting storms in your path, I want to be the one to help you face them," he declared firmly. Isabella felt a lump in her throat. She had never heard anything so direct and blunt. Her pride told her to push him away, but her heart wanted something else. She stood up abruptly, trying to escape the feeling. "Enough! Don't say any more. I don't want to hear it." Gabriel didn't insist. He just nodded and sat back down in front of the fire. Silence reigned again, but this time it was laden with thoughts, emotions and questions she didn't want to ask herself. While the storm raged outside, a real hurricane was brewing in Isabella's heart. The storm did not let up all night. The sound of water hitting the roof and wind whistling through the trees made sleep impossible. Isabella remained restless, pacing back and forth across the room, while Gabriel sat silently by the fire, watching her calmly and patiently. Suddenly, a roar louder than any before shook the earth. Isabella's horse whinnied desperately in the stable. She ran to the door, but Gabriel stopped her by gently holding her arm. "It's dangerous to go out now," he warned her. "I can't leave my animals," she replied determinedly. Gabriel smiled respectfully. "That shows the kind of woman you are." "All right, I'll go with you." The two of them wrapped themselves in blankets and went out into the pouring rain. The stable shook with each gust of wind, and several boards had come loose. The horse was agitated, stamping its hooves on the ground. Isabella tried to calm it down, but then a piece of wood fell dangerously close. Gabriel reacted immediately, pulling her away and shielding her with his body. "Be careful!" he shouted. Startled, she looked into his eyes. Despite the danger, he didn't seem scared. He was determined to protect her. They managed to secure the barn door and calm the animal with effort. Soaked and panting, with their hands full of mud, they returned to the house. Without realizing it, Isabella helped him take off his wet jacket. For the first time, her fingers brushed Gabriel's skin, and despite the cold of the night, a strange warmth ran through her body. "Thank you," she murmured barely audibly. Gabriel moved a little closer, his intense gaze disarming her once again. "Don't thank me. I just did what any man who stopped to care about a woman would do." Isabella's heart beat fast. She wanted to pull away, but her feet wouldn't obey her. Gabriel's closeness and his firm, sincere voice slowly broke down her pride. Suddenly, another clap of thunder shook the house, and the lamp flickered. Isabella jumped and, without thinking, took refuge in Gabriel's embrace. He wrapped his strong, protective arms around her, as if he had been waiting for this moment his whole life. "You don't have to be alone anymore," he whispered. Isabella whispered in his ear, "Let me be by your side." She slowly pulled away, struggling with her emotions. Her lips trembled, but she couldn't find the words. All she could say was, "I don't know if I can." Gabriel smiled tenderly. "You don't have to decide now. Just let your heart speak." That night, as the storm raged on outside, Isabella could hardly sleep. Something inside her had changed. For the first time in years, she felt that someone might be willing to share her burdens, her fears, and her dreams. And that person was under the same roof. Dawn brought an eerie silence. After the storm, the ranch resembled a battlefield, littered with fallen trees and broken fences, and the river had swollen to dangerous levels. Isabella went out into the yard with a heavy heart. Much of what she had cared for over the years was now in jeopardy. "The cows!" she exclaimed when she saw that part of the corral had collapsed. Without thinking, she ran towards it. Gabriel followed her immediately. Several animals were trapped in the mud, struggling to escape. The danger was real. If they didn't act quickly, they could lose them all. "You can't do it alone, Isabella," Gabriel said. "Let me help you," Gabriel said, grabbing a rope. She hesitated for a moment, but the urgency won out over her pride. She nodded. Together, they began to pull, push, and guide the animals to higher ground. Their boots were covered in mud, and they were left breathless by the effort. But they didn't stop. At one critical moment, the ground gave way under Isabella's feet, and she was about to fall into the water. Gabriel grabbed her tightly, preventing the worst. "I'm not going to let you get lost," he shouted desperately as he dragged her to safety. Isabella was trembling, both from shock and from the intensity of his words. Gabriel was no stranger, just someone looking for shelter from the storm. He was a man willing to risk his life for her. When they finally managed to save the exhausted animals, they collapsed onto the wet grass. The sun began to break through the clouds, illuminating their mud and sweat-covered faces. Isabella looked at him, and for the first time, her voice was free of barriers. "All my life I have fought alone," she said, "but today I understood that sometimes we need someone by our side." "You are already part of this place, part of my life," she said, pausing, her eyes shining. Gabriel took her hands gently. "Then let me stay. Not as a stranger, but as the man who wants to walk with you every day." The silence was filled with their shared heartbeat. When the wind brought the fresh scent of wet earth, Isabella leaned towards Gabriel. There were no more words, just a sincere kiss. The beginning of a new story. Life can be hard when we decide to carry the burden alone, but someone always comes along to show us that sharing the load makes us stronger, not weaker. Opening your heart does not mean losing independence. It means gaining companionship along the way. Do you think accepting help is a sign of weakness or courage? Leave your opinion in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share this video so that more people can hear this story. Remember to drink water, take care of your health, and have a blessed day.